The San Francisco Bay Delta is formed where the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers merge in Northern California. The Delta is an important natural resource that supports farming and fishing communities. That's why farmers and fishermen are working together to protect it.
The Delta is one of those unique places left in the world where it all comes together. Fishing, farming, recreation, water supply.
The situation right now in the Delta began a number of years ago. People, I think, at that time did not understand ecosystems, and they saw this water and they thought of it as wasting to the ocean. They looked at the parched lands to the south, the places where they wanted to put in suburbs and that, and they thought, well, my God, if we just take this water, we can put it on those lands and we'll make the deserts bloom, so to speak. What they didn't realize is how the estuary, how this ecosystem works, in that by taking away the fresh water, they were basically taking away the lifeblood of this real treasure.
For generations, family farmers worked their fields in the Delta along rivers full of salmon. But over the past decade, agribusiness diverted so much fresh water from the Delta that many fish populations collapsed. Now, farmers in the Delta and fishermen across California are working together to protect the Delta, their jobs, and their way of life.
Farmers and fishermen are stewards. I mean, by their very way of life, they have to be stewards. And California right now is guilty of not looking at that philosophy as the kingpin of the whole water process. It's stewardship, it's conservation, it's not take.
What's happened in the last dozen years or more is that we've simply taken too much fresh water away from this estuary. The estuary, as a result, are dying, and the salmon are becoming lost. It's become like a black hole for baby salmon trying to get to the sea.
There's a carrying capacity for this river. This river has only so much that we can take out of it before the ecosystem that's dependent upon it collapses.
The water, instead of flowing west to the ocean, is now flowing south to the pumps. What this means is the baby fish get lost. They either become entrained on the screens of the pumps or they become easy prey for predators. Historically, the water would carry them to the ocean. Now that's not happening.
Salmon is the heart of the coast from Morro Bay to the coast of Oregon. And they used to provide livelihood for people in that tremendous coastal area. And it's gone.
In 2002, there were 1.4 million fall-run fish. By 2009, that had dropped to 39,500. It's the biggest crash of a salmon run since the era of when the dams were built. Over a 90% drop, biggest in the U.S. history. So it's been devastating. Of course, when it got so low that the fish were in danger of going extinct, they stopped the fishing seasons.
With 2 years of salmon closures, after being in business for 42 years, were drastic. It terribly affected my life. No income coming in, or 30% of the gross that you had the year before for 3 years in a row. It's terrible. You try to live on 30% of your gross.
I'm worried about the future, what's happening to our salmon. They gave me a livelihood, supported my family, took care of my husband towards the end before he passed away, and I care what the salmon is going to do for the future and for future generations.
Salmon are a tremendous food resource. They're an economic resource, both for ocean fishermen, for bay fishermen, for delta fishermen, and it's part of our history.
Salmon are one of a number of commercial fisheries in the state of California. Historically, they've been the fishery that's tended to employ the most people, the most vessels. What happens is when we lose that production, much of our fishery infrastructure and these ports begin to collapse. There's no longer enough business to support the fish processor, to support the ice houses, the fuel docks, the marinas, all this. There's less for the tourists to come see, because tourists, believe me, they come to these ports not just to go fishing, but they come to watch the activity, to watch something that's very ancient. It's devastating to these communities.
In 2007, water exports to big corporations were reduced to more sustainable levels for the sake of delta smelt and other fish. Fishermen know that protecting the tiny delta smelt also protects salmon and thousands of fishing jobs in California and Oregon.
They talk about the smelt and the biological opinion on the smelt. And on some television shows on national networks, you've seen people hold up this thing and saying farmers are being put out of business because of this little smelt. The endangered species are like the miner's canary. They're telling us what's wrong. And we need to take notice of that, and we need to protect them. And the protection is water, water, water.
That's what we've got to come to grips with now is the fact that we're going to have to reduce the take of water from this. We're going to have to restore the water back to this delta ecosystem, and then work with those who've developed economies around water that wasn't theirs, and try and help them find new sources of water or reduce their dependence on this water.
Wastewater recycling, groundwater recharge, reoperation of our reservoirs, stormwater capture, those are things that are going to really prove to be, in the future, the real solution.
There actually is a lot of common ground between the fishermen of this state and the farmers. In the summertime, as a kid, I would see those farmers looking to get out of the heat. That was before air conditioning, coming over to the coast to cool down, and the trading of tomatoes for salmon or whatever. I watched as first there were orchards, and now the hillsides are dotted with wineries. I think it's something we definitely need to preserve, the same way we need to preserve our salmon and crab and some of our other fisheries. They're very much part of the California heritage, and they're something that we just need to save. It's not just the economy, it's just what we are as Californians.